Welcome back, it's me, Lou, and I'm here again for another action figure review. Okay, truth be told, this is actually my second attempt at filming this video. With most of my videos, as you know, I'll normally have the action figure in the actual card or box, and I'll actually unbox it. Well, for a specific reason that I'm not going to go into detail right now, I shot this video and I opened up the figure, but then I had to reshoot it, so we're starting again from scratch. But the card and package was ruined, so we're just going to skip the unboxing and get just straight to the figure. So for today's action figure review, we're looking at this. We're looking at Masters of the Universe Origins Zodac. So this is part of Mattel's updated Masters of the Universe line of action figures, new for 2021, and we're looking at Zodac here. So if you haven't seen the actual figure on card, the card looks like your average, usual Masters of the Universe Origins fare. The front of the package is kind of like that red with like the asteroids exploding and the logo on top. And then on the back of the box, you have the illustration at the top, which if I remember correctly, it looks like it's taking place maybe in the mountains, and then you see He-Man and Skeletor fighting. Zodac's kind of hiding behind like a rock, and then his floating like chair or chariot, which kind of looks like the throne to Castle Grayskull, is kind of floating next to him. And then the caption kind of reads how like Zodac's kind of like a neutral character. He's not siding with good or evil, so he's kind of observing the fight. I'm not really well versed in terms of the hardcore fiction of the character, so I couldn't, tell you one way or the other what his back history is. Growing up, I was just kind of more so exposed to the old 80s cartoon and whatever adventures I'd play out with my own toys. But yeah, today we're looking at this. We're looking at Zodac. So, if you were like me and you grew up in the 80s, the Masters of the Universe and He-Man and Skeletor, they were a great line of action figures. They kind of explored the realm of both fantasy and science fiction. And this is one guy I think that did a really good job of this balancing that look. He has a very futuristic looking helmet, some, sci-fi looking body armor, and yet he kind of still retains some of those like fantasy barbaric elements, kind of like with his fur bikini, the riveted belt, and then he has these weird like web toes, or someone referred to me, they called them the demon feet. And it's a great figure. He still retains his classic color scheme of the red and the gray, and then the white. And it's a beautiful figure. Let's examine him a little bit more closely. There's some nice details sculpted into his helmet. And like the original design, he still covers up his face, and all I kind of see is his mouth, and he has that chin strap underneath. The body armor is removable. There's straps on the back. And his torso is kind of covered, if you can see it. There's kind of that sculpted, like, it's either like fur or body hair or possibly even feathers. Now, what makes this figure a little bit different than He-Man is that some of the body parts are a little bit different. Like, for example, on his forearms, he kind of has almost like these weird webbed fins on the top and the bottom of his forearm. As I mentioned before, his torso, his upper torso, kind of has like the semblance of like chest hair or maybe his fur. His little fur bikini is kind of like, we've seen the sculpt dozens of times already on the other figures. The only thing difference is repainted differently. And he kind of has these like furry boots with the web toes. The articulation standard from what you expect with the with the Masters of the Universe Origin line. His arms rotate, they go out, swivel at the elbow and bend at the elbow, the knees, ankles. And with most of the figures, you get this little kind of cheat sheet that reminds you of which pieces are removable and swappable. So you can take off his head, you can remove his arms at the shoulders, you can separate them at the waist, and then you can remove his boots. So what this enables kids and adults to do is that if they want, they can like swap out the body parts. You know, maybe give him like Roboto's arm. You know, someone else's boots. And in some ways, you know, you can either customize a figure or, if using your imagination, create an all-new character, which is a very fun play feature. In the 80s, I remember with the original figures that you couldn't necessarily swap out parts. That wasn't its intended feature, but some of the figures, their arms kind of just like, you could have just pulled them out and actually just swapped the arms out. And I think even the heads, but that wasn't intended. But it's cool that with this newer line, they're giving you that option. And it's a great play feature. It's an added bonus. In terms of accessories, it comes with this blaster. And like all the other Masters of the Universe figures, he comes with his little comic book. Masters of the Universe, Dimensional Doom. And these are fun. I'd like to think that these provide us like a glimpse of what we might get in the future. You know, like possibly new vehicles, new play sets, new characters. It's a great throwback to the original 80s line. And I've said this before, I really wish they would credit the writer and artists of the comics, because I think they're really neat. And I'm hoping that at some point in time they'll collect you know, all these comic books into like a hardcover form or graphic novel like they did with the original 80s ones. So since we're on the subject of Zodac in the 80s, let's compare him to his OG counterpart. So here's an original Zodac figure. Now this isn't my childhood Zodac. Most of my Masters of the Universe figures when I was little, I think at some point in time they were either broken or thrown out, or, you know. But this is a dude I purchased maybe a year or two ago. I bought him secondhand from a collectible toy shop. And he was in decent shape. Gave him a nice scrub down. And he's missing his blaster, but that's alright. But as you can see, that they did such a great job with the newer figures. This really emulating the original ones. You know, the proportions are almost the same. This figure uses more modern figure engineering, so that, you know, you'll have the more points of articulation and greater range of movement. But the old ones, those figures are so iconic, just in terms of the character and figure itself. You know, you even have the sculpting's very similar. You know, you have kind of like that weird like body fur or feathers, and they recreated it on the new one. The helmet design is almost the same. The original, there are a little bit, there's slight differences. Like this one has a little bit more scribe lines on the side of the helmet than this one. But at the same time, this guy kind of has like a bolt of trim halfway through his bottom helm, whereas this guy kind of doesn't. This one has actual like nipples sculpted in, if you can see that. Whereas this one has he has nipples also, but it's also covered under fur. Yeah, so Zodac is a cool figure. It's a cool character. When I was a child, I think, you know, one of the things I really did like about him is that he kind of looked more science fiction. And he looked like some sort of cool like soldier or something. But I remember there was a certain point in time where it kind of like threw me off that, you know, he was wearing this future. It was kind of, I wasn't used to the amalgamation of like the science fiction armor and the barbarian fantasy like tights and the boots and stuff, because it really threw me off. Because I love the helmet, I love the armor, but then as a kid I'm like, how come he's still wearing that weird look fur underwear when he's like covered in like metal plating? And then he had these weird feet, and I couldn't understand if he was part animal or if he was just like a human guy wearing like animal boots. But it's neat. So if I had to rate this guy numerically, my first thought would be easily anywhere between 7.5 to an 8. He's kind of, I mean, he's kind of as great as a figure as I think it is, and as fantastic as he looks. He's kind of just very blah. You know, he doesn't have like he he's not as loud of a character as some of the other ones. Like you look at Beastman or Hordak, and they kind of scream like crazy and awesome. You look at this guy, and there's something about him. He just seems kind of more subdued and neutral. But there's nothing against that. He does everything he should do, especially in terms of what you expect from this line of toys. His articulation's the same as everyone else's. It's not hindered in any way. He really retains his iconic look to a T. So it's a beautiful figure. Do I recommend him? Of course I do. If you're already collecting this line, chances are, I'm guessing that you're trying to complete the entire set, maybe barring the exclusives because those are kind of hard to get. But it's a figure that I think that's well worth the purchase. If you go find them. I mean, all the stores I go to, whenever I find the Masters of the Universe figures, it's always just either He-Man and Skeletor, but it's getting to the point now where I'm just seeing Skeletors. He-Man's... I'm not seeing him as often as I used to. I still see a lot of Battle Cats and Sky Sled, but, other characters are harder to find. So let's wrap this up. Once again, my name is Lou. Thanks for joining me on this kind of brief action figure review. It means a lot to me that you devote a little piece of your day to check this out. I know I don't necessarily do the best and greatest reviews, but I'd like to think at least the content I offer is sincere, honest, and if it's something you can relate to, like, I don't know, if you're like me and you grew up during the 80s or 90s, maybe this is kind of a cool throwback to back in the day. So, I hope you enjoy your day, and feel free and stop by anytime. Take care.